It's easier for me to answer a question than fix a mistake. Let me show you how to do it. Go do it. Come back to me. It's going to where you're known. I mean, Starbucks was kind of my Cheers. I mean, everybody knew my name. So I had to sit down with her and say, listen, I need you to dress more professionally. A week later, she gives her notice. I mean, over something simple like, hey, listen, you can't wear tennis shoes and leggings as you're sitting at the front desk. We're a law firm. Welcome to Lighter Shade of Brown. Hi, I'm Joe Brown. Today we're going to do a little bit of a solo episode. We don't have a guest. Today I think we're going to cover a lot of different subjects, just kind of where we're at. I think really how I built the firm, how to build a firm. I get this question all the time. So I felt like it was a good thing to maybe dedicate an episode to of, how do we do this? How do we start? I started this practice with one other lawyer and one paralegal, my paralegal. She's been my paralegal for 20 years at this point. So she's crazy to put up with me for 20 years. We really built this thing with just a reputation. I had been practicing law for 13 years. I didn't realize how much of a following I really had until I started the firm. We had one billboard. That was it. We had a billboard on I-10 and not much of a marketing budget. And we just started building it from scratch. About 5-6 months in, I was able to land $1 million case. I settled it for just under $1.5 million, referred from a friend of mine in Starbucks. This just goes to show you, I believe 100% in grassroots and people knowing you. I'm a social person. I used to start my day after I dropped my kids off at school at Starbucks. I would sit there, eat my breakfast, maybe have a cup of coffee, and just got to know people, for that 30, 45 minutes, people coming in and grabbing their drinks. And in doing that, I developed a lot of friendships. It just weird. I mean, my wife says I talk to everybody, and apparently I do, and it works out. And I think that's key. It's going to mixers. It's going to where you're known. I mean, Starbucks was kind of my Cheers. I mean, everybody knew my name. They knew my drink. I probably pulled 3 or 4 baristas out of there who turned into being paralegals later in the firm as I built that. People who wanted to grow in their profession, in their career, and didn't want to be a barista the rest of their life. That's really nature. If you're a genuine person and you are who you are, people are going to like you. It's the fake person that nobody likes. It's the guy that puts on a show that they're like, okay, I don't want to hang out with that guy. My wife says people love me or they hate me, and I think that's pretty accurate. I think it's usually pretty strong one way or the other. There's not a lot of people in the middle, but I don't really worry about that. I just worry about being me. And the other thing that you got to do when you're starting a firm is you got to do a freaking good job. If you do a good job, your clients will send you new clients. Your biggest advocate's going to be your prior client. And that's really how we built this practice was referrals from people who knew me or knew of me or who knew my talents as a lawyer, and then prior clients who then built upon that. And we started with nothing. I mean, honestly, I had enough money in the bank to cover my expenses for a year, enough to cover the paralegal and the rent, and I didn't take a salary, and the other attorney didn't take a salary. And it was when we finally settled that big case about 9 months later that we actually took our first payment, and we paid us a small salary for that first year. So I think being smart, understanding, growing it, and understanding that's going to take time and it's going to take money. I mean, I had some money in the bank. I saved some money and put it aside and started that way. And that's just how personal injury is. You don't get paid till the case settles. Now you're going to be a family law lawyer, or you're going to do bankruptcies or criminal law. You get paid up front, so at least you don't have that delay. And and now it just becomes, how do you bring in cases? If you're a good lawyer, they'll find you. I do believe that. And if you do a good job by your clients, they'll help send to you. And that's the most important thing is I judge our business and success based on where our referrals are coming from. We do a lot of marketing, but our number one referral this week, prior client. I mean, I think 30% of our clients came this week from prior clients or someone who knew someone who had a case with us. So that's important, and that's what I judge all of my practice on. And I think that's how you grow from small to big, and you do it the right way. So the biggest financial risk that I took was frankly just starting the firm. I mean, honestly, I ran another firm. I was second in charge of that firm and made it fairly successful. I knew the minute I went out on my own, I was kind of not hireable anymore. I mean, most firms are not going to hire the guy that's going to replace him. Who does the hiring? It's not generally the owner of the firm. It's typically the guy who's second in charge. Well, I took a firm that was pretty decent. It was a good size, but made it the second or third biggest firm, in what I was doing. I had proven myself. Well, if I'm that guy, I'm not going to go hire that guy knowing that guy might take my job. So I knew the minute I left that I was no longer hireable, so I had to make this work. And yes, I was a little freaked out. I had a son who was getting ready to go to college in about a year and a half. I had a daughter who danced, and if anybody has a daughter who dances, you understand that's a super expensive sport. And she was looking to go to high school, but she wanted to go a different route. She wanted to go to private high school. So I had expenses that were on the horizon that were very scary. And I knowing that if I didn't make it work, in all likelihood, it was going to be hard for me to find a job. So I think that was the biggest financial risk. That's probably what prevented me from maybe doing it earlier, was going, okay, what if this doesn't work? And if it doesn't work, how do I support my family? How do I lose? I don't want to lose everything I've built, in the first, 13 years of being a lawyer. But lucky, knock on wood, things turned out well. And I think my reputation as a lawyer and the way I approach cases end up helping me be successful. My vision of ALG was, yes, I've always seen it as being big. I mean, I've thought nationally. I've thought, the name Accident Law Group was not trademarked. That was a gift for us to find that name and make something out of it. I think it says who we are. It could easily become a Walmart or a Kmart. Where nationwide, I mean, everybody knows of other nationwide firms like Morgan & Morgan, but when you hear Morgan & Morgan, you don't know what they do. When you hear Accident Law Group, you know what we do. And I think that's the benefit of the name, and I've always seen it, when we're in a couple of states, and, it is something we may grow into other states or maybe we, sell to someone who has that ability to be national. And it has those, when I say ability, that means basically money, and finances. Who knows? Maybe that's what happens, 10, 15 years down the road when I'm, nearing the end of my career. I brought on a partner, and I think that I made the mistake of being exceptionally fair, if not overgiving with the partner. We clearly were not on the same level, but, we both were putting in the same amount of money. And I made us equal partners, but we were never equal. And that was ultimately the problem, was that, hey, listen, we're splitting profits equal. We're doing things equally, but one of us is the workhorse and one of us the guy bringing in all the cases. And that was always me. I was putting in more hours. I was bringing in the cases. I was the reason that we were, and I'm sharing with someone who wants to work 8 to 5. And doesn't want to give out their cell phone to clients, or doesn't want to give out their cell phone even to doctors, so that he can be reached on after hours. Well, that's my personal time. Well, I mean, when you own a business, there's no such thing as personal time. Realizing I made that mistake and eventually bought that partner out, I think was key to us actually getting to that next level and leveling up. We had become flat. We become stagnant. And several years ago, I made that choice. Took out some equity and bought out. And once we got north of $10 million a year in fees, that's a different level, and that puts you on the plane with the big guys. And that's really what we're where I'm happy, and that's where I want to be, and I want to continue to grow, and that's frankly what we deserve. We have that reputation of being a badass law firm that's going to take insurance companies to the mat. We litigate cases, and getting to that next level was very important, and understanding that you have to have litigation to get there. That's an expense. It's an investment. And a lot of firms don't want to invest in litigation because you don't see those dividends sometimes 2 or 3 years. And you got to know that, and you got to have the foresight to say, hey, I'm going to sacrifice short-term profits for long-term goals, long-term profits. and long-term growth. And I've done those things along the way. And there's been many a time where, I didn't really necessarily make a lot of money. I made enough to pay my bills. But I really was focused on how do I grow the firm? How do I take care of who I have here, who's always taking care of me? When you're growing, you have to also grow your infrastructure. And not growing your infrastructure will ultimately lead to problems, and it'll make your growth stagnant. I literally was just on a phone with a guy who does really well. I mean, he's bringing in $2-3 million in fees a year. He's got a couple lawyers working for him. He doesn't have any marketing budget. He does all of it through word of mouth and referrals from doctors and friends of his, but he has no operating system. And I'm like, listen, you're starting to grow. This no operating system works when you have 3 or 4 clients, but you can't manage, when you're getting 15, 20 clients a week. That's going to build to a caseload that you're not going to be able to manage just with a simple spreadsheet. And I think that that's where I've always been good. We started with an infrastructure. I built the infrastructure first, understanding that I anticipate us to grow and be bigger. And then as we've done that, we've adjusted accordingly. And I think if you don't understand that you need a case management system, you need to have the right, QuickBooks account. Let's just don't start cheap with just a checkbook and a ledger. You start with those things with the expectation that in the next, 6-9 months, years, you're going to grow, but you're now set up for it. So you're not behind the 8 ball trying to convert systems or really just learning a new system when you're already overwhelmed with new clients or work. I mean, so I think that's key. I think all good law firms, I know a guy right now who's launching in Colorado, and he's done a great job of really spending the first 9 months building his infrastructure. And he hasn't really marketed for cases yet. And if he gets a couple cases, great here or there. But really it's been like, all right, let me hire the right people. Let me get the right people in the right desks. Let me get the soldiers I need. Let me get the office I need. Let's make sure we're in the right location. All those things are key. I did the same thing. I mean, I've always lived in a certain part of town, but my office wasn't in that part of town. I put myself in more of a central location so that I could draw from east and west side and central Phoenix, at least with my first office. And then from there we grew. Yeah. And now we're, 6, 7 offices, but understanding, hey, I've got a clientele. This is where they're at. Now I need to put an office out there. That's also an expense and a growth. Sometimes people get hung up, and I say people, lawyers, business owners, it's across the board with, hey, I'm making good money. Why do I want to invest? Invest takes away from my profit. But if you don't grow, people always say you stop growing, then you're gonna fail. And I think I do believe that you got to continue to be prepared to grow and put offices where your clientele is. I did an analysis at one point, and I have a lot of offices, or I had a lot of clients near I-17. I bought an office over there. Now we have the biggest billboard in town near I-17. So, so we've done that. We were getting clients from Albuquerque. So I put an office in central Albuquerque, great location, right where the 2 freeways meet, easy for clients to get to come in and sign or come in and pick up checks. But understanding how people operate and understand your clients are no different than you. So how would I handle this? I want to go to an office that's close to me. I don't want to hire someone that's on the west side. So I want someone near me. Well, if I'm on the west side, I want to drive to Tempe. I need to have someone near me. So, understanding those things, as much as people never come into the office anymore, because post-COVID, everybody does everything electronically. And that was probably one of the big things that we made a jump to. Before COVID, we switched to an electronic signing system that not a lot of law firms had. And when COVID hit, we were fine. And there was tons of personal injury firm I used to work for, who did not have the ability to sign people electronically. So they were trying to figure out, what do I do? Because people don't want to come in the office. People, what do I do with masks? So they're trying to figure this out, and they're scrambling. They're sending 3-4 months. Well, we were already a year ahead of that. I mean, we had the system. We had it working. We knew how to work it. We operated within it. We were using it actively. Clients were already signing up electronically with us prior to COVID. So understanding And that was a big part of it. We knew that we needed that system to grow. We didn't anticipate COVID, but we knew we needed that system to grow to help us. I identified a problem early on. We get a lot of calls over the weekend, and then we would set appointments for Monday for them to come in and sign with us. Well, 50% of those clients were never showing up on Monday. We had one client go to the wrong firm because they got confused by the address and signed with another firm. So I was like, we got to fix this problem. How do we do this? We're spending money to get clients to call, and now we're losing them. So I discovered this system of signing people up via DocuSign. It's not actually a DocuSign; it's a similar type system. But understood that, hey, there's a couple firms out here doing this. We need to get moved to this system. So we moved into that system, and that shored up our issue on the weekends with signups. And then, lo and behold, it helped us grow even more when COVID hit because we were well prepared. I think any business owner learns lessons and has growing pains as their business is starting and growing. Obviously, we touched on having a partner when I probably shouldn't have an equal partner. I think we made some other mistakes here and there, office size. We grew out of our first office within like 6 months. And then that office we grew out of in another like 9 months. So I didn't anticipate the growth. So those were expensive issues, but they're good issues to have. You don't always know you're going to grow, so you don't want to take out a huge office space and then not be able to fill it. So I wouldn't know those as problems, but there were definitely situations we had to overcome, fairly early on. Yes, I've learned some mistakes as far as hiring attorneys, made some mistakes in hiring people. Sometimes it's better for me to hire someone who's straight out of law school so I can teach them the ALG way, whereas someone who comes over from a different law firm has learned their way. And I think our way is superior to most. I'm not anti-listening to new ways of doing things, but for the most part, we have a system that I've cultivated over 20 years that's proven to be fairly successful, and clients like it. The cases move fast and quickly, and I think that was big mistakes where I kind of try to bring in some people that I didn't feel like I had to train as much, and unfortunately, they didn't give the experience to the clients that we expected, and ultimately we had to make changes. And when a lawyer leaves or a paralegal leaves, clients aren't always happy with that. Whether or not they like the lawyer or paralegal just gives them a reason to complain, and you want to give your clients as little reason to complain as possible. So I think that's always been a struggle of ours, but it's not any different for us than any other law firm or any other business owner. Is just, hey, listen, personnel is difficult. And since COVID, people have a different idea of work. And some of it I wouldn't call work. They expect to make a lot of money and show up about 9 and leave about 4:30 and make sure they had an hour and a half lunch and they don't want to be told they did anything wrong. I've learned that too. Younger individuals struggle with criticism. I've seen really good employees say, "Hey, listen, you're doing great. You're doing phenomenal. But why don't we tweak this one thing?" And then immediately they're done. They can no longer work. I mean, it's like you can't correct them and say, "Hey, listen, why don't we turn this or why don't we turn this way or do this?" I had a really good receptionist. I thought she did a great job. However, she did not dress the part. She would come in looking like she's headed to the gym. She was really good at what she did. She answered the phone well, but we have clients come in the door. So I had to sit down with her and say, "Listen, I need you to dress more professionally." A week later, she gives her notice. I mean, over something simple like, "Hey, listen, you can't wear tennis shoes and leggings as you're sitting at the front desk. We're a law firm." Irony in that is I think she went on to another profession that would require you to dress very well as well. So I'm not quite sure how that works. I don't understand that, but I think those are some things that we've had growing pains, I think, that are traditional that any business owner I talk to, it's all the same. I mean, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a realtor, you're an accountant, the business issues they go across all paths. Leadership is always hard and it's individual. And I think that it's something that's unique and having the right people to lead, and each person can be led differently. I'm more of a lead by an example kind of guy. I'm going to put in the extra hours. I'm going to show you, hey, listen, you as a lawyer think, well, I can't do more than, I don't know, I can't do more than $2 million a year in fees. That's just too much work. Well, I did $6 million last year. So how can you not do 2 if I'm doing 6? Let me show you my way of doing it. What I always do say is, listen, everybody's individual, and I try to respect the autonomy. And I tell, because everybody learns differently, everybody organizes differently. I said, let me explain how I'm organized, and then take from that what you want, and that's generally how I try to lead things is, hey, listen, this is how I do it. This is successful. I've been doing this 20 plus years. I'm, I lead the firm in fees and whatever else. And so take from that what works for you, because you may not think the same way I do. I'm very linear. I'm good at math. I'm good at, and a lot of lawyers are really good English people. So they think with different types of their brain. And I think that's something that I've learned, come to understand is, hey, listen, individuals are just that. They're individuals, and they have to do things differently, and they have to feel like they have some autonomy to have rewarding in their job. They don't want to come in and be have a cookie cutter day. And I think that's key. And I understand that, I respect that. I try to be more of an open door leader. Hey, listen, let me show you how to do it. Go do it. Come back to me. Come to me when you got questions. It's easier for me to answer a question than fix a mistake. But I don't want to be overbearing over your shoulder. Hey, do it this way, this way. Let's do it that way. And either certain things that we have that are specific that we require, that you do at ALG. One of those things is how we explain offers. A lot of law firms, hey, let me go get to the best offer and then I'll get back to you. We do not do that at ALG. I'm very much of, hey, I think I can get you to this number. If I can get this much money in your pocket, do I have your authority to resolve the case? And if the client is not happy with that number, well, then we have another conversation. Okay, well, let's talk about what the value of the case is. Let's talk about what litigation looks like. But I think individuals that go with the idea of, let me get to the top number. Well, what if that top number is not what the client wants? What if the client wants more than that top number? I had this conversation with a client yesterday. I said, hey, we made a $5 million demand. They offered $200,000. He's like, well, I'm not taking less than 4. I go, okay, your case isn't worth 4, but your case is definitely worth way more than 200,000. Go, maybe it's worth, $1 million. Maybe it's worth pushing 2, but definitely not 4. I said, but we still got some things to do to build that case. So let's work on that. But yeah, that's a conversation that's tough, and you got to have those conversations with clients. But someone who says, let me just negotiate to the top offer, well, that's not going to happen in this situation. I've got a defense attorney and an insurance company who basically, for whatever reason, don't believe we'll file a lawsuit. I mean, despite the fact that we had a jury trial last year, I have 5 litigators, and I think we filed 5 or 6 lawsuits last week. So don't know. Or maybe it's just a defense attorney who wants to make a lot of extra more money, bill an hourly, and this is a case that's got that kind of value. We've got a defendant on this that's probably worth $2 or $3 billion. So money is not an object for them, and they don't care, and maybe they just want to drag it out as long as they can before they write a check. Could be that too. However, having that conversation is something different that we do here. A lot of law firms who really focus on just, let me get to the top number, and then they try to cram that number down the clients, because litigation's expensive and litigation takes time. And if you get the case settled in pre-litigation, it's generally better for everybody. But if a client is not happy with that number, and an unhappy client is not going to refer you clients, it doesn't make sense. And it really is good to understand where your client's coming from and what they see the value of their case is, as opposed to try to dictate that. And I think that's something that makes us a little bit different. We've got an NFL draft coming up, and I love football, so I'm excited to watch this draft. Find it a little unique that the number 1 draft pick, most likely, the Indiana quarterback, is not attending the draft and refuses to attend and wants to stay at home with his family and have that experience with his family. I think that's unique. I know a couple of people have done that in the past. Travis Hunter did that. where he wanted to stay and have that experience with his family. I don't know. I feel like you get invited to the draft. It's kind of like almost an obligation. You're going to be the number one pick. You know, the Raiders are picking you for sure. Shouldn't you show up and get the jersey and get the picture and bring your whole family with you? I mean, I know no one's going to criticize you for bringing your family. I think you get to bring them, and maybe you're limited to 3 or 4 people versus a house of 20 or 50, but you can't have that party when you come back home. I don't know. I kind of feel like it's, not draft appropriate. It doesn't fit the, what you would expect from the overall number one pick. I don't know. That's just me. I'm old school. I feel like that's what the fans want. And ultimately you're going to go make $100 million because us fans tune in and we watch and we pay to have the NFL ticket and we pay for the seats and we buy the jerseys and we do all those things. So there are some obligations that maybe you got to do. And this is a small period of these people's lives. I think that's the other thing too that we look at is NFL players, the average NFL player lasts 3 years. No, you're a first-round draft pick. You're probably going to last longer. Maybe you're 5, maybe you're 7 years. But you're still in your 20s when you are retired. I mean, that's something to think about. I mean, this is a short time, and there's only going to be so many opportunities. There's only one time you get drafted. There's only one player that gets drafted number 1 overall. So I don't know, man. I'm kind of old school. I think you got to show up. I know they even asked Peyton Manning to kind of try to convince the guy, and he said no. I wish him luck. I mean, he's going to beat the Raiders. I think it's going to be fun to watch him. And frankly, he other than this, I mean, the kid looks like he's an amazing kid. He seems to be a great person, so I don't want to hold this against him. it's just a protocol. That's probably new age versus old age. I'm an old guy now, so I've got different ways of looking at things, but I think the kid's going to be a stud. I think he's got the best. When he won his ESPY and he spoke to his grandparents in Spanish. I mean, everything about this kid I love. So this is probably the first thing I got a criticism of him. So I'm excited to watch his career. I'm not a Raider fan, but I'm a Cowboy fan. So you know what? Listen, you can criticize me. It's my team. I picked him when I was a kid. I'm stuck with them until Jerry Jones passes the baton. We're probably just going to suck. Dak is probably not the quarterback. I've never liked him. I never thought he was going to be the quarterback. So, hey, listen, but that's my team. I'm stuck with them. I'm going to live with them. Till the day I die, I'll be a Cowboy fan. I'm not one of those fair weather fans that changes or jumps ship. I have a buddy, fun story. I have a buddy who's a lawyer locally who always loved the Bengals. Always loved the Bengals. Everything was Bengals. He even had a golf bag that was a Bengals bag. Fucking ugly. I mean, just ugly as shit. And frankly, his golf swing's ugly too. And then he jumped ship because he get pissed of how bad the Cincinnati is. I mean, he's been a Bengal fan for 20 years. He immediately goes over, becomes a Tennessee Titans fan. They start sucking. The Bengals go all the way to the AFC Championship the next year. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? You jumped ship a year before they actually got good. And that just shows, that's what you get. And I said, maybe you're the jinx because Tennessee hasn't done anything since you joined them. But I think that's who I am. I'm a loyal guy. You know what? My friends, like I said, my paralegal, she's been my paralegal for 20 years. You know what? That's how I live my life. And I think there's certain things that you have to have. And I believe if you pick a team, that's your team. And that's been my team since I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. So here I am, a shitty Cowboy fan.